So wars and rumors of war doesn't mean anything unless there's no wars. And there's no rumors of wars. So these first 3.5 years are going to be so peaceful that there is going to be a new temple built. Because remember, people saying that the temple has to be built before the rapture. And that's just not the case. Jesus, Paul, Peter, none of them ever said, watch for a temple. When you see the temple, you'll know that I'm coming back. Nothing like that. The temple is going to be built in the first half of the tribulation. There's going to be so much peace on earth that there's going to be this union. And then when the Antichrist then stands in the place where he ought not, which may happen at the midpoint of the tribulation, maybe a little bit later, and declare himself as God, he's going to do that in the temple at Jerusalem. And so what people get wrong is they don't understand what this Gleanings is here, and they think that that's the rapture, so they think that the abomination of desolation, the Antichrist, must stand in the temple before the rapture can hit. That's just not the case. So remember, peace right here. All right, let's pick it up Matthew 24. We're going to read through it real quick. Making sure all up to speed. Had some people out last week, so we'll cover it. And not get in depth. We got in depth with a lot of this stuff last week. All right. Let's pick it up in verse 3. And as he sat upon the Mount of Olives, the disciples came unto him privately, saying, Tell us, when shall these things be, and what shall be the sign of thy coming, and of the end of the world? So the question is asked of his coming and of the end of the world. So what is asked is answered through chapter 24. They did not ask, what is the sign of the rapture? It's of the end of the world. There is nobody in their right mind that thinks the rapture is the end of the world. There's still another 7 years. And so Armageddon, for most people, usually marks the end of the world because the Millennium is a completely separate thing. And so we have the questions being answered, and he's answering over here. He is not answering here. And that's the key to Matthew 24. And let's pick it up in verse 4. We're for verse 7 or verse 6. And ye shall hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that ye be not troubled, for all these things must come to pass, but the end is not yet. So again, end is over here, but there's going to be wars and rumors of wars, and that's going to be here, because the second 3.5 years of the tribulation is just going to be hell on earth. There's going to be war. There's going to be famine, pestilence, earthquakes, hail mingled with fire falling, and let's see. Verse 7, For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrow. So the first half of the tribulation, that's where we get the words to name them. Verse 9, Then they shall deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you, and ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake. Again, notice the word nations there is just one more key that they're talking about Jews and not the church. And they shall, and then shall many be offended, and shall betray one another, and shall hate one another. And many false prophets shall arise and shall deceive many, and because iniquity shall abound, the love of many shall wax cold. Now watch this. But he that endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. So what you do is you circle the saved in verse 13, and then you circle the saved over in verse 22, because it's the same salvation. So he that endureth unto the end, he that shall endure unto the end, same shall be saved. Verse 22 says, And except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. So verse 13 is not talking about salvation. I've had people tell me you can lose your salvation because it says, He that endureth unto the end shall be saved. Completely out of context. We're talking about the end. We're talking about over here. So let's explain verse 13, shall we? So this, remember, wars, famines, and pestilence. Remember, we're returning with Christ here to rule and reign with Him for 1,000 years during the millennium. What's the point of us returning and ruling and reigning? Over what? What's the point of me reigning over something if everything's perfect? See, what's going to happen is the people who are alive and facing Armageddon, only the people around Jerusalem are going to die. So someone in Russia who's not saved, or somebody in some other country that's not saved and survives Armageddon, of course they would because Armageddon is only around Jerusalem, those people get to walk alive into the millennium. Unsaved. But they walk in unsaved, but they get to reproduce. They get to enjoy the millennium. We will rule and reign over them. It's the only way this thing makes sense. What are we going to rule and reign over if we're all perfect? So that he endured until the end, the same shall be saved, is talking about walking alive into the millennium. That will not be you or me because we're saved. We got raptured out 7 years ago, according to this timeline. So, people in, when I say Russia, or whatever other country it is, get to walk alive into the millennium. As long as they were good to the Jews during the tribulation. We'll get to that later. But that country, the people of it, get to walk alive into the millennium. They'll 1,000 years of reproducing and no curse on the ground anymore. So everything that happens, everything that grows, there'll be no curse in the ground. Everything's productive. It's going to be now a grand time, but Jesus will rule and reign with a rod of iron. And but you remember, at the end of the millennium, there's the battle of Gog and Magog. Satan will be unloosed. We're going to cover that in chapter 20 next week. And there will be a battle of Gog and Magog, but that's at the end of the millennium. When I was reading Revelation in high school, that worried me. And the guy that I was being discipled by, I still remember going and having lunch with him over at the Wendy's on Mohawk. And I said, hey, how do I know that's not me? Here we are in the millennium, and people are still going to turn against Christ. What if that's me? And he said, well, the best you can do is hope it isn't. That's not a good answer. When we go to the millennium, we're going to be perfect, and we will not have the ability nor the desire to turn against Christ. What will happen is Satan will be loosed, and we're going to cover that next week. And when he's loosed, these the armies of the world, well, people, they haven't gathered any armies, will all of a sudden rise against this ruthless leader, Jesus Christ, and they will all then come together and they'll try to fight, and then Jesus will speak once again. That war is over. The millennium's over. Great white throne judgment, and then eternity future. So, verse 13, but he that endure unto the end, the same shall be saved. Endure till the end is the same end from verse 3. It's not talking about the rapture. It's not talking about me enduring to the end that I'm saved. We have 2 of my daughters in this room. They are my daughters no matter what. I don't care what they do. I say, they look at me and they change their name. They're going to change their name one day. But they look at me and say, I hate you. Do you mind if I use you, Pam?
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if your son looks at you and says, you're not my mom.
Which he does all the time.
Okay, no, well, who's your mom now? You're still the mom. It always will be the mom. And the thing is, people using this verse 13 out of context. Yeah. Anyways, let's keep going, shall we? Verse 14. And this gospel of the kingdom shall be preached in all the world as for a witness unto all nations, and then shall the end come. People have told me before that they believe this verse is talking about the rapture. It isn't. It's talking about the 144,000 and the 2 witnesses right before the end. Or Acts chapter 2 verse 5 also fulfills this. Verse 15. But when ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth let him understand. So it's talking about the temple in Jerusalem. Then, now look at verse 16. This is going to be key to chapter 25. Then let them which be in Judea flee into the mountains. Let him which is on the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. And woe unto them that are with a child, and to them that give suck in those days. But pray ye that your flight be not in the winter, neither on the Sabbath day. So what we find there is Jesus' warning. I am coming back at the end, and if you are in Judea and you haven't fled, you're going to die. The armies will have converged on Jerusalem, and if you haven't fled, you're just going to die with them. And the blood of the horses is going to flow up to the horse's bridle. There's so many people gathered together in this spot. And so that's key. It's a geographic thing. Jesus will speak. Everybody in a geographic location dies because they didn't heed this warning. And again, not talking about you and me. We're saved. We're riding back with Christ. All right. By the way, we also learned last week, we put it together, that now Jesus at this time didn't know exactly when the rapture would be or when the second coming would be, because this implies that their flight would be a moving target. It's not necessarily pray that it not be in winter. In other words, it's not a set date yet. Verse 21. For then shall be great tribulation. So this is the second 3.5 years of the tribulation, which on your sheet is over here. Such as are not since the beginning of the world to this time, nor no, nor ever shall be. Well, yeah, we've read all through all these, the seals, the trumpets, the beast, the demon locusts, the horses, all this stuff coming out of the abyss and biting people, stinging them, and they're paralyzed for 5 months. Yeah, it's going to be pretty bad. Now look here, verse 22. Except those days be shortened, there should no flesh be saved. So again, that flesh salvation, verse 13, is there again. And remember, there has to be 1,260 days. You see that right there? It has to be 3.5 years, and it has to be 42 months. So I believe what's going to happen here, and we backed it up last week, is actually God's going to make the days shorter. But for the elect's sake, those days shall be shortened. And we proved from Amos chapter 8, verse 9 last week, and a couple others, that elect is referring to Israel, not to the church. And so then there's warnings here about not believing. That if somebody tells you that the Christ is around, don't believe him. Verse 27, for as lightning cometh out of the east and shineth in the west, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For wheresoever the carcass is, there shall the eagles be gathered together. So in other words, when Christ comes back for the second coming at the end, you're going to know it. The rapture, there's no indication of that. Was your hand going up? Oh, okay. Let's see. All right, verse 29. So here's where some do get this out of order as well. Immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened and the moon not give her light. So that's the same as Revelation chapter 6, the sixth seal. And the stars shall fall from heaven, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. And then shall appear the sign of the Son of Man in heaven, and shall the tribes of the earth mourn. And they shall see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven with power and great glory. So you see that word again. It's all an answer to the question. This is not talking about the rapture. And he shall send his angels with the great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his elect from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. So then the question becomes, who's then being gathered? It's not talking about the church. It's talking about the people who get saved during the tribulation. And because the church has already been out, otherwise nothing falls in place. Verse 36. But of that day and hour knoweth no man, no, not the angels of heaven, but my Father only. But as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. So what people do is they read this and they say, whoa, the days of Noah were bad. So therefore, when society gets bad, that's when Jesus is going to come back. And it doesn't say that. Read the next verse. For as in those days that were before the flood, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage. Now let's see. Are eating and drinking sinful? No. Are marrying and giving in marriage sinful? No. Until the day that Noah entered the ark. In other words, what Jesus is saying is they're going about their business. They're just living their life. They're going about, and boom, destruction. And that's what this verse is talking about. How society is, the degradation of society, does not mean that Christ is coming back. Rapture is a signless event. There's got to be a falling away first. And I'll submit unto you that if we look around, I think that there is a falling away right now. But I'm not necessarily sure that is the falling away that's referring to in Scripture. A lot of people going to church. Don't we go talk to people? Not a lot of people saved. Let's see. Where are we at? Verse 39. And knew not until the flood came and took them all away, and so shall this coming of the Son of Man be. All right. Then shall two be in the field, and one shall be taken, another left. Two shall be grinding at the middle, and one shall be taken, another left. So that's then talking about the gleanings at the end. Watch therefore, for ye know not the hour of the Lord come. But know this, that if the good man of the house had known at which hour the thief would come, he would have watched and would not have suffered his house to be broken up. So you be ready. And there's the rest of the parable. But however, we're going to now skip ahead. Because now these are parables, and we've already somewhat covered them, and I don't want to cover the parables again. I want to get to, we're now at where we were last week, and we had to cut it short, but I want to make sure that we got here. All right. Any questions so far? All right, let's go to Matthew 25. Let's pick it up in verse 31. So, a gross misunderstanding, I shouldn't say gross, I don't want to be dramatic. A misunderstanding of the end times, how everything's going to fall. You can put your glasses on your end of your nose and say eschatology, but we'll just go ahead and put our glasses up where they belong and say end times and be okay with it. So, not understanding end times also makes people misread Matthew 25, and then they try to, also with Matthew 25, try to teach a work salvation. We're saved only one way, and that is through the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That is it. There's no other way to be saved. I can't feed enough people. I can't visit enough people in prison. I can't give to the poor enough. I can't do anything enough. It's only through Jesus Christ that I go to heaven. Do we all agree on this? All right. I have, more times than I care to count, had Matthew 25 quoted back to me from people who think that they have to do works in order to get saved. So understand, Armageddon is a geographical thing. Jesus, when He comes back, will be coming back with us. We'll be trailing behind Him. And so when we're not going to fight, there's not going to be a nuclear war. Jesus is just going to speak, and all the armies are going to just be squished as a wine press. The pressure, blood everywhere, and it's going to be a mess. And so then He takes His own. He then stands on earth and claims it. So, but understanding that it is a geographical thing is understanding Matthew 25. What's going to happen here, so understand when Jesus comes back, and the Bible talks about Gleanings, how the elect from the four winds are called up right before His return. So that means that nobody on the planet at the time of Armageddon is saved. Do you follow me on this? The people who get saved all throughout the tribulation are the Gleanings. The 144,000 are called up. Matter of fact, it could be that all the 144,000 are martyred, because you remember earlier in Revelation, it was their souls under the altar that were calling for revenge. But people are going to be getting saved throughout the tribulation. So the Gleanings will call everybody up, and the only people left on earth are unsaved. Are we clear on that? Jesus comes back for Armageddon. Only saved people are behind Him, and only unsaved people are on the planet. That is key. I've said that a few times tonight, that something's key. Okay, we have a few keys here. More keys, more important. All right, so what did I say were keys so far? Rapture at the end. I said that another rapture at the end. The two witnesses being called up at the end. We're returning with Christ. Armageddon, geographical. He that endureth in the end shall be saved. But however, the irony is that those people aren't really saved. They're just physically saved and get to walk alive into the millennium. Does everybody understand the whole concept of if you're alive after the millennium, or after the Armageddon, you get to walk alive into the millennium? Did I say that right? If you survive Armageddon, you get to walk into the millennium and repopulate. There's one catch on this. Yes?
I just got a question.
Go ahead.
So in between the 7 years, if you die not being saved, then what happens?
The same time as if you die unsaved any other time in human history. Go to hell.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
No, okay. That's what I was saying.
That is actually one thing that's consistent with all this whole thing. Because if you die in the Old Testament, which we don't have to worry about, I believe you went to Abraham's bosom. Then people started going to heaven after the resurrection. He led captivity captive, and so then during the tribulation, if you die, I think there's something else that happens that's different. If you're saved, you go to heaven. I think it's a little bit different, but I'm not sure. But yeah, no matter when you die, if you're not saved, it's hell. Which is the next chapter, which I'm still not really too keen on wanting to cover. Answer your question?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so everybody on the planet right now, I'm not saying right now, but at this point, at the end of the tribulation, the Gleanings has happened. And so now Armageddon has happened. Everybody on the planet that's left is unsaved. But they're alive. So there's hope. Right? Does everybody follow me on this? Let's pick it up verse 31. That right there will explain this. Verse 31. Let's pick it up here. When the Son of Man shall come in His glory, and all His angels with Him, then shall He sit upon the throne of His glory. And so that's talking about, still answering the question about the end. And before Him shall be gathered all nations, and He shall separate them one from another, as a shepherd divideth his sheep from the goats. And he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. So all nations will be in this judgment. Remember, everybody in this judgment is lost, but they belong to a nation. Let's use Turkey as an example. Turkey, no, we don't want to get, okay. So Turkey is going to be judged as a nation. Syria will be judged as a nation. That's what this is talking about. The nations will be separated out. Remember, everybody's unsaved, but a nation will be brought out together. Italy will be brought out and judged. Spain will be brought out and judged. When I say they'll all be gathered there anyways, and so those people will be gathered together. That's what it's talking about. They're going to be divided from sheep and goats. I even did that right and left. Did you catch that? So verse 33 again, and he shall set the sheep on his right hand, but the goats on his left. Then shall the king say unto them on his right hand, this is the sheep nations, come ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world. So the kingdom is talking about the millennium. For I was a hungered, and you gave me meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me drink. I was a stranger, and you took me in. Naked, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you visited me. I was in prison, and you came unto me. Now, am I a brother of Christ, or am I a son of God? Son of God, right? Who are the brethren of Christ? Jews. Now watch this in verse 37. Oh, I'm sorry. Naked, okay. Verse 37. Then shall the righteous, so people get that mixed up. Well, it's talking about righteous. It's none righteous, but keep reading. Answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee an hungered and fed thee, and thirsty and gave thee drink? When saw we thee a stranger and took thee in, or naked and clothed thee? Or when saw we thee sick or in prison and came unto thee? And the king shall answer and say to them, Verily I say to you, insomuch as ye have done it unto the least of these my brethren. It's talking about Jews. It's not talking about Christians. Ye have done it unto me. So, here's what happens. So what you read here. You read, if you just pick up and start reading Matthew 25, you think that if I was thirsty and you gave me drink. Well, if I will give people drink, then I get to go to heaven. I was a stranger and you took me in. Oh, if I'm going to take strangers in, if I want to go to heaven. Naked and you clothed me. So if I feed people, I get to go to heaven. I was sick and you visit me. I need to go to the hospital and go to heaven. I was in prison. You came unto me. I need to go to prison and go to heaven. Because that's what it says here, right? Insomuch as least you've done it unto one of the least of these, my brethren, you've done it unto me. All right, now watch. Here's what it's talking about. Armageddon is a geographical event. What's going to happen is Jews are going to obey Matthew 24 when Jesus said flee. If you're in Judea and see the abomination stand, the desolation stand where you ought not, flee. Because I'm coming back. You're going to die if you're near this location. That's the warning given in Matthew 24. So they'll flee. The Jews, remember Revelation chapter 12 talks about this. The earth, that Satan will try to swallow and try to destroy Israel, but the earth will swallow the flood. And what that's talking about is talking about nations are going to take in the Jews. So as the Jews flee the Antichrist, as they flee the armies converging on around Jerusalem, they'll have to go somewhere. So let's say Jews go up to Turkey, because it's straight shot, no boat, no anything. Just go up there, go to Turkey. Let's say Turkey takes them in as a country. Let's say Spain and Italy take them in. Let's say Syria turns them away. And that's exactly what this is talking about. So in this scenario, remember, nobody's saved. Turkey, Israel, and by the way, I'm just guessing nations. I'm not, who's going to be pro or against Israel during the tribulation? I have no idea. But the nations that take in the Jews and feed them and clothe them and take care of them, those are the sheep nations. So if Turkey takes in Jews during the tribulation, then that's who Jesus is talking about. So Turkey and everybody who's from Turkey, who's unsaved at this time, is set aside as a sheep nation. Then all of a sudden we find that Syria did not take them in. And so they're taken and they're set over here as a goat nation. Let's go ahead and read there. Verse 41. Then shall I say unto them on the left hand, Depart from me, ye cursed, into everlasting fire, prepared for the devil and his angels. For I was a hungered, and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty, and you gave me no drink. So you read verse 41, and it would imply that if I don't do these things, I'm going to hell. No. Everybody is already unsaved in this judgment. So if your nation is a goat nation, you die. And just like Brendan brought up, if you die and you're not saved, where do you go? Because it's talking about the righteous shall go into the kingdom. When we die, we don't go to the kingdom. We go to heaven. So this is talking about the kingdom of the millennium. And now it's talking about going to hell if you're a goat nation. But it's talking about going to hell because you're not saved. And so your judgment as a goat nation is you get to die. Let's keep on going here. For I was hungry and you gave me no meat. I was thirsty and you gave me no drink. I was a stranger and you took me in. Naked and you clothed me not. Sick and in prison and you visited me not. Then shall they also answer him, saying, Lord, when saw we thee in hunger and a thirst and a stranger, naked or sick or in prison, and did not minister unto thee? Then shall he answer them, saying, Verily, verily, verily I say unto you, as much as you did it not to one of the least of these, you did it not to me. And again, least of these is talking about verse 40, brethren. And these shall go away into everlasting punishment, but the righteous into life eternal. And see, if you don't understand the order of revelation and understand who's saved, who's lost, the different parties, you read this and you think, well, Pastor said that it's only through Jesus Christ that I get saved. I heard somebody else say that. But then you start reading this and thinking, well, I could lose my salvation. What if I don't endure until the day I die? Well, my daughter's back here. If they don't endure, and stay how they should be to the day they die, does that mean they're no longer my kids? Nope. Forever my kids. And so, we get saved. We don't lose our salvation. But a misunderstanding of Matthew 24, well, he that endureth unto the end be saved. Well, he turned his back on Christ 2 weeks before he died. So therefore he's going to hell. No. You turn your back any time you want on Christ. He shall never leave thee nor forsake thee. Yeah, you're making a huge mistake. Yeah, there's going to be consequences. But hell isn't one of them. So what we learn here then is that we need to understand the broader picture of Scripture instead of just taking one little verse out of places in different places and then apply them. God won't give anybody more than he can handle. Well, that's a misrepresentation of 1 Corinthians 10:13. Have any of you ever had more than you can handle? I have. So, then the Bible must not be true. No, you're misquoting it. Well, and I've had somebody tell me, I'll tell you who it was. My friend George. Occasionally I'll go work at a shop for him, and we do some bartering. Because back when I had a Volkswagen, then he would do the work on it, and I would, do something like clean up a shop for him, or whatever the case was. And Catholic guy, good friend, but what's funny is we can be openly honest and disagreeing on religion, and we do with regularity. And back and forth, and political back and forth. He's a socialist, he's a Catholic. And, he started quoting Matthew 25. Well, if we don't feed he's talking about how government should act. If we don't clothe the sick and feed the poor, that's what Jesus says we're supposed to do. Well, yeah, Jesus said we're supposed to do, but God never commanded the government to, which, by the way, I'm not for human welfare. We need it in certain circumstances. But, that command is given to me as an individual. It's not given to a government to take care of. And and then I said, and I tried to explain this. Well, you're misquoting. And I started getting into where Matthew 24 and 25 fit. And he looks at me and says, you know what? Just stop it. I don't have to read my Bible. I'm Catholic. And we had a good laugh over that. I'm like, so whatever. All right, tell me again why Jimmy Carter was the best president we've ever had. And he will argue that point for you. But we have a good time. But, Matthew 24 and 25, a misunderstanding is going to make you really... Then what people start doing is then they go to Revelation and they say, well, no, Revelation it's symbolic. No, it's not. Everything in Revelation is found somewhere else and explained. You just have to go find it. Well, no, the woman standing in the sun, that's obviously symbolic. No, it's Israel. You go back to Genesis chapter 12 to find that. Just looking around, you find everything in Revelation somewhere else, and it explains, and Revelation isn't this great mystery. It isn't this separate book off there on the distance. It is the finish and the bookmark of the entire Bible. So, with that, next week we will get to chapter 20. We're going to talk briefly about the millennium. I'm not sure. Last time we did the study in Revelation, I didn't spend a lot of time on the Millennium. I want to spend more time on the Millennium, and so maybe we'll do that. Just be here next week, and we will cover those things, and we'll see how in depth we get. But the thing is about the Millennium, the curse is removed. Earth is going to, I believe, Earth is going to be returned back to creation type status. I think. If I'm wrong on that, again, just go ahead and elbow me and say, man, you're wrong on that. And but what will happen is we will have our perfect glorified bodies, and we will rule and reign with Christ for 1,000 years. And we're going to be ruling and reigning over the people who survived Armageddon, but are sheep nation survivors. There's sheep nation judgments. The nations that took in Israel as the judgment that they're going to face. So those sheep nations get to walk into the kingdom alive, regular-bodied, sinful people, and reproduce for 1,000 years under great conditions. And at the end of the 1,000 years, Satan will be loosed, and then there'll be the battle of Magog.